In the stillness of this moment, before a single word of prayer leaves your lips, I want you to ask yourself one honest question. When was the last time you truly spoke to God? Not out of habit, not out of desperation, not because someone told you to, but because your soul genuinely ached to connect with the one who breathed life into your very existence. If you stay with me for the next few minutes, I promise you something inside of you will shift. Something will awaken. Something that has been sleeping beneath the noise of your daily life will rise, and you will never pray the same way again. Prayer is not a ritual. Prayer is not a religious obligation. Prayer is the most powerful, intimate, and transformative conversation a human being can ever have. It is the moment when the finite reaches out to the infinite, when the created speaks to the creator, when a broken vessel dares to approach the throne of the Almighty and says, "Here I am, with all my flaws, with all my failures, with all my doubts and all my fears, here I am." And yet, so many of us have reduced prayer to a checklist. We wake up, we mumble a few words, we ask for things we want, and we move on with our day as if we just place an order at a restaurant. And that is why so many people say God doesn't answer my prayers, because they were never really praying. They were just talking at God, not with God. You see, prayer above God means prayer that transcends the ordinary. Prayer that goes beyond the surface level, prayer that breaks through the ceiling of your limited understanding and enters into the very presence of the Most High. It is the kind of prayer that shakes heaven and moves mountains. It is the kind of prayer that changes not just your circumstances, but changes you from the inside out. Let me tell you something that most people will never tell you. God is not impressed by your fancy words. God is not moved by how long you pray. God is not keeping score of how many times you kneel. What moves the heart of God is sincerity. What captures his attention is a heart that is desperate for him, not for his blessings, not for his gifts, not for what he can do, but for who he is. The Bible says in Jeremiah 29, verse 13, "You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." Not with half your heart, not with a divided heart, not with a heart that is distracted by the world, but with all your heart. And this is where most people miss it entirely. They come to God with divided attention. They pray while scrolling through their phones. They pray while thinking about their problems. They pray while worrying about tomorrow. And then they wonder why heaven feels silent. It is not that God is not listening. It is that you are not fully present. Prayer above God requires your full presence. It requires you to shut out the noise, to close the door, to silence the distractions, and to come before him with nothing but your raw, honest, broken, beautiful self. David was called a man after God's own heart, not because he was perfect. He was far from perfect. He was an adulterer, a murderer, a liar. But what made David different was his honesty before God. Read the Psalms and you will see a man who poured out everything before God. His anger, his fear, his confusion, his joy, his gratitude, his pain. David did not perform for God. David was real with God. And that is the kind of prayer that moves heaven. When you stop performing and start being real. When you stop trying to sound spiritual and start being honest. When you stop hiding behind religious language and start crying out from the depths of your soul. That is when something supernatural happens. That is when chains break. That is when doors open. That is when healing begins. That is when miracles are born. Now let me guide you into a deeper understanding of what prayer above God truly looks like. First, it starts with surrender. Before you ask God for anything, surrender everything. Lay down your plans, your desires, your ambitions, your fears. Lay it all down at his feet and say, "God, I don't come to you with a list today. I come to you with an open heart. Do whatever you want with my life, because your ways are higher than my ways, and your thoughts are higher than my thoughts." Second, prayer above God is rooted in gratitude. Before you ask for what you don't have, thank him for what you already have. Thank him for the breath in your lungs. Thank him for the beating of your heart. Thank him for the roof over your head. Thank him for the people who love you. Thank him for the trials, because even the trials are shaping you into who you are meant to become. Gratitude shifts your focus from what is missing to what is present. And when you pray from a place of gratitude, you are praying from a place of power. Third, prayer above God involves listening. Most people treat prayer as a monologue. They talk and talk and talk, but never stop to listen. God speaks, but he often speaks in whispers. He speaks in the stillness. He speaks in the silence. He speaks through his word. He speaks through other people. He speaks through circumstances. But if you are always talking, you will never hear him. Learn to be still. Learn to wait. Learn to listen. Because sometimes the most powerful prayer is not a prayer of words, but a prayer of silence, where you simply sit in his presence and let him fill you. Fifth, and this is perhaps the most important, prayer above God transforms you. The ultimate purpose of prayer is not to change God's mind, it is to align your heart with his will. Prayer is not about getting God to do what you want, it's about becoming the person God created you to be. Every time you pray, you are being shaped, you are being molded, you are being refined like gold in the fire. Prayer burns away the impurities, the selfishness, the pride, the fear, the unforgiveness, and what remains is a heart that looks more and more like the heart of God. So today, I challenge you to pray differently. Today, I challenge you to go beyond the surface. Today, I challenge you to enter into the kind of prayer that changes everything. Start with 5 minutes of honest, raw, unfiltered conversation with God. Tell him what you are really feeling. Tell him what you are really afraid of. Tell him what you really want. And then be quiet and listen. You will be amazed at what happens when you approach God not with religion, but with relationship. Not with performance, but with presence. Not with words alone, but with your whole heart. This is prayer above God. This is the prayer that heaven responds to. This is the prayer that will transform your life, your family, your future, and your destiny. Remember, God is not far away. He is as close as your next breath. He is waiting for you right now, not to judge you, not to condemn you, but to embrace you, to heal you, to guide you, and to love you in ways you have never been loved before. So close your eyes, take a deep breath, and pray. Not because you have to, but because the God of the universe, the creator of heaven and earth, is inviting you into the most sacred and powerful conversation you will ever have. And that conversation will change everything.